Good morning, and thank you for joining me today on Facebook Live, Joe Samet's session. It is right now 10 o'clock on Monday, June the 1st. So thank you again for joining me today. We're talking about now part 3 of learning all about your credit. So I have some very, I would say, boring and dry things to talk about, but nonetheless, they're very, very important to be discussing and to be aware of. One of the things that I want to start with, just to let you know that this Facebook Live and doing live streaming is all brand new to me, as it is to a lot of you. So we're doing the best, and I'm doing the best I can. And I know that I need to sometimes speak a little slower, speak a little more clearly, and I will most certainly try to master that today. So I appreciate everybody's patience as we go through this, as we're trying to navigate the whole credit scene and the whole new way of doing business today. So I appreciate you being online with me and sharing as often as you can. So for that, I thank you very much. I want to start today by thanking my guest from last week, Kevin Cochran from the Enriched Academy. I've known Kevin for a number of years, and I know that he has built a program that is benefiting a number of lives, whether they be young, old, established, just starting out. So if for those of you that were able to join us last week, I appreciate you for coming on, or I thank you for coming on. And I hope you got something out of it, because Kevin is a wealth of information. He and his team have built a credit financial literacy program that can help you or help people that you know through these trying times and take you where you need to go in your life. So from that point, again, I'd like to thank Kevin. And for those of you that were here, please share the post as often as you can. Share it to everybody you know, simply because we're giving away 4 Enriched Academy learning programs. I think we're raffling them off this Friday for anybody that shares or likes, and the instructions are most certainly being sent out. But please share and share often, and we're going to be drawing for 4 of these packages. So I hope you all can benefit by that, and you benefited by last week's session. So first of all, let's start with what we're going through right now during this COVID crisis and the shutdown, or lack of a better term, the shutdown. I think it's important for all of us to sit back and take stock in our credit, where we spend our money, what we spend our money on, who we're spending it on, and things like that, simply because now we have the time to sit down and review what is in fact happening with your bank accounts, with your credit card statements, with your credit in general. So take this opportunity to sit back and assess. Take this opportunity to sit back and review where you're spending your money, what you're spending it on. And I'll tell you personally, my wife Andrea and I, we found, or Sarah found for us, that we had duplicate accounts in a number of different places. And we had probably been paying those accounts for years without really realizing it. And I know that sounds really, really silly and it sounds foolish, but I will tell you right now that it's not uncommon for people to have credit that they're not even aware of, to have debts that they're not fully familiar with, and they just go through the routine of paying them. So take this time to sit back and assess everything that you have going on with, again, your credit card statements. Take a look at your credit card statements and really learn what it means. What does it mean to be paying the minimum payments? How long will it take you to pay off this debt? How many years will it take you to be financially free if you just make those minimum payments? These are things that you need to, again, be more familiar with going forward. The other thing to take a look at is your bank statements. Is your bank charging you bank fees unnecessarily? Are you paying for monthly checks that you don't write? Are you paying for monthly withdrawals that you don't take out? Things like that, be very, very clear on, and make sure that you get to know them and address them. And it's not going to hurt for you to call the credit card company or call your lender, call your bank, and negotiate, have a discussion with them to see what you can do to lighten some of these fees. One thing that I realized foolishly was that I like to play lottery every so often. And with the shutdown, I didn't really want to go into convenience stores. So I started doing the OLG online lottery purchase, because they make it look so convenient on TV. Well, true enough, it is very convenient. And no, I didn't win any money, but I realized that my bank was charging me a $4 cash advance fee for the credit cards that I was putting the lottery on. So I stopped doing that very, very quickly. But it's little things like that. It's $4 here, $2 there that are going to debit or reduce your balances very, very quickly, and before you know it, it's going to get a hold of you. So be very, very aware of, again, what's going on in your credit world. Get to know it. Get intimate with your credit, because you need to know it. You need to know who you have credit with. If you have credit with lenders that you haven't used in some time, cancel it and get it off your credit bureau. There's no point in leaving it there as unutilized credit, because the lenders are going to look at the amount of credit you have available to you. Now, a lot of lenders won't factor that into your ability to qualify, but they will most certainly look at how much credit you have sought over the years. Are you a credit seeker, a credit monger? Do you have multiple inquiries on your credit bureau that show that you're out there looking for credit? And I'll get into that as we talk about 2 case studies today, but just make sure that you clean up your credit bureau. Today, we're going to talk about also the 5 C's of credit. And for those of you that don't know what they are, research it, look it up. You have time. We have access to information today that we've never had before, and time to access a lot of that information. So do that as soon as you can. But the 5 C's of credit are character, capital, collateral, and conditions. So let's talk about the first one, character. The lenders that you're seeking credit with, and hopefully they are the good lenders, the good credit people, they look at your character. They look at who you are, what you're all about, who do you work for, how often do you seek credit, what is your credit score, your beacon score, or otherwise referred to as your FICO score. So they look at the overall picture of who you are, what you're all about, and how you've maintained your credit world or your credit life. Second is capacity. What is your ability to repay the debt that you're applying for? So if you're applying for a debt consolidation loan, the bank is going to look at your character, they're going to look at your capacity, and what got you into the situation that you're now seeking a consolidation loan. Is it because you couldn't afford the credit that you took out? You were irresponsible with the credit that you applied for? So they take a look at all those 2 things to consider whether or not you in fact are the individual that they want to lend money to. They want to make sure that when they lend you money that you have the means and the ability and the desire and the personality, the acumen to pay it back. Number 3, capital. If you're applying for credit, the banks are going to look at what credit you're applying for, and have you put skin in the game? Have you tried to finance or financially float your venture, your business, whether it be your personal credit or a business credit? Have you put your skin into the operation to make sure that you're showing goodwill, that you put money in, and now you're asking the bank to come along and assist and come along for the ride? They want to make sure that you are capitalized to the point where you're not going to go broke. Okay, very, very important. It's not everybody's God-given right to have credit. It is a credit facilities are made available to individuals that have the desire and the need to benefit by them or to apply for them. But the bank or the lender reserves the right to lend to the individual that they know have the ability to pay them back. 4th is collateral. What is it you are putting up in the event you borrow money and you end up going bad on that debt? You can't pay the debt. What does the bank have? What recourse does the bank have? Do they have a vehicle that they can repossess? Do you have receivables or inventory that they can fall back on? The bank needs to have a fallback position. And lastly, conditions. What conditions are you applying for that debt under or that loan under? Are you applying because you are maxed out on all of your other credit and you have nowhere to turn? What are the market conditions at that time? What's the real estate market looking like? What are the retail markets looking like? So from that standpoint, the banks will assess what, again, the conditions are. And those are the 5 C's of credit. So get to know them and give that some thought every time you apply for credit. Give that a second guess as to why it is you're asking for that credit. One of the things that I've always worked on, my wife Andrea and I have always worked with, is if we're going to buy something or we want to apply for credit, what we always ask ourselves are these 3 questions. Do we really need what it is that we're trying to buy? Do we really want what we're trying to buy? And most importantly, how are we going to pay for what it is that we're trying to buy? Are we going to pay for it over time? Are we going to pay for it up front? Those are the things that you need to become, again, very familiar with and very comfortable with. And you need to ask yourself those hard questions. Do I really need that new car? Do I really want that new car? Can I afford to pay for that new car? It's a depreciating asset. Is it a smart thing to be doing? These are things, again, that you need to ask yourselves. So right now, I want to get into 2 little case studies on credit. We have pulled 2 random credit bureaus from our database. Names have been wiped out because I don't even know who these are. Sarah had pulled them for me. But I want to give you an indication as to what I can see when I'm looking at a credit bureau. And for those of you watching today, I'm trying my very best not to sound so formal or institutional. I want you to know that these are discussions I have with individuals on a one-to-one basis, and we talk about credit like it is the most important part of the entire equation, because it truly, truly is. I can look at somebody's credit bureau and I can tell where they've been for credit. I can tell how often they've been, what types of credit they've applied for. I can look at a credit bureau and see the FICO or the beacon score that I had mentioned. Credit bureaus now have what's called a bankruptcy index navigation, which is an indicator. It's an algorithm that determines what the individual's likelihood is of going bankrupt or having credit issues. So from that standpoint, we can see a lot from somebody's credit bureau. I can see, as I mentioned, where they've been, where they've lived, how often have they moved around. Not that that has a major part in somebody's application for credit. However, it just gives an overall dynamic of what the overall scope of the individual's performance has been like. Collections show up on somebody's credit bureau. I can see who they borrowed money from and didn't pay. And a lot of things have a good explanation. A lot of situations have a very good story. So as long as the story can be articulated to a lender and it's a legitimate story, then by all means, it's something that we can most certainly help you share when we're applying for credit for somebody. So I'm going to give you an example. I have an individual here with a beacon score of 850, which is considered very, very good, very attractive. Anywhere between 8 and 900, 900 being the highest, is a great beacon score. Anything 700 to 800 is a very good beacon score. Anything 600 to 700 is questionable. We've got to look at it a little more, perhaps a little more carefully. And anything below 600, it's iffy. It's something has gone wrong. Something has gone awry with that individual's credit. And in some cases, we can see it just by looking at perhaps some of the trades. We can look at whether or not they're overdrawn. So in this particular case, this individual has a beacon score of 850, which again is fantastic. And I look down the list and they have absolutely no debt. They have a $1,200 credit card bill that I can tell by the credit bureau they pay off monthly. The rest, they have 5 or 4 trades on their credit bureau, all with the same institution, who shall remain nameless, but everything is down to a 0 balance, which actually, my apologies, no, they have 3 with the same institution, 1 with a second institution, but everything is paid off monthly. So this individual with a FICO beacon score of 850, I can tell you right now, they get paid. They might have good income, I don't know, but they pay whatever they borrowed. And the limits on their credit are substantial or significantly low and surprisingly low. So that's another thing to keep in mind, is that individuals that have high balances on credit cards usually have higher credit limits, and lenders are very, very happy to keep lending you or increasing your limits with the hopes that you're going to pay it back and with the hopes that you don't default on them. So if you can maintain an average or a more maintainable credit limit, you can be assured that you're not going to spend any more than you're able to, and you're going to live within your means. So that's credit number 1. Fantastic beacon score. I can look at that credit bureau and know quite quickly that this individual is going to get credit, and this individual is probably going to be a very good mortgage candidate. So from that standpoint, not many questions there. The second individual, you'll notice that the credit bureau is now 4 pages rather than 2. So right away, I know that they shop for credit and they have gone to multiple places. Their beacon score or FICO score is 572. So remember, I mentioned anything below 600 is questionable. So right away, I know that there's something wrong. Their bankruptcy index navigation is extremely high, meaning that the algorithm within the credit bureau can determine that because of their use of credit, their type of credit, this individual has a high propensity to potentially going bankrupt or getting themselves into significant credit problem. The inquiries on their credit bureau, different from case study number 1, where they had no inquiries other than us that did this one. This individual has probably 10. And 10 credit inquiries, actually, that's not really a bad number of inquiries. It's more than perhaps they would need, but I have seen some where they have been 2 pages of credit inquiries. Some individuals they apply for credit every chance they can. In this particular case, they might have 10, but they are all with either credit repair companies, pay loan companies, or B-type lenders. So from that standpoint, again, in conjunction with the beacon score being so low, the bankruptcy index navigation being so high, and now I see these inquiries, I can tell quite quickly that this individual, without even looking at the credit right now, this individual has some issues. If we go through the credit items, I find that every limit is higher than perhaps it should be, and every balance is right at the limit or slightly higher than the limit. So from that standpoint, this individual right now is in trouble. This individual has nowhere else to turn. This individual can't go and apply for more credit to help consolidate because they have treated their current credit so poorly. So from that standpoint, again, watch your credit, get to know your credit, and realize what you need and what you don't need. Get rid of what you don't, because if this individual, and like I said, I don't know who it is, but if they don't repair or start repairing their credit now, and hopefully they're young enough to do so, but if they don't start trying to repair their credit as sooner rather than later, this problem will just continue to snowball, and it will get the better of them, and they're going to get themselves into trouble. So a couple of things, as I mentioned, make sure that you limit the amount of inquiries that you do. Make sure that you apply for credit only when you need it. Don't apply for credit for the sake of applying. For example, you go to a sports event and you want to get a team towel. Don't apply for the credit card. Doesn't make sense. It's not going to help you build your credit. It's going to get you a free towel that's going to be gone and in the garbage in 2 months, but your credit's going to linger because they're going to keep throwing credit at you. So be very, very cautious with how often you apply for credit and with whom you apply for credit. The other thing is watch your limits and spend within your limits. You want to make sure that you are not borrowing any more than you can afford to pay. So if you review your credit bureau and you have an idea as to what your spending limits are, you're going to know what your capacity is, and you can then figure out which debt perhaps you might want to get rid of because it's not necessary. So those are things that, again, you want to look for. The other thing, again, just very quickly, there are 4 pages of credit here. Limit the amount of credit you have. Remember I mentioned the inquiries, keep them low. The amounts of credit you have and who you apply for credit with, keep it low. And the limits, keep them low. So again, manage it. I would encourage all of you to do a personal credit inquiry at least once a year. And what you can do is get in touch with one of the 2, if not both, of the credit bureau agencies in Canada, one being Equifax, and you can go to equifax.ca, or TransUnion, transunion.ca, and pull your own credit bureau to see what's on there. And the reason I encourage you to do that is because you may very well find that your credit bureau has been merged with somebody else's that doesn't belong to you. And it might make your credit look good, but then again, it could make your credit look quite bad. The other reason you want to do that is to make sure that individuals are not reviewing your credit unbeknownst to you. So one thing to keep in mind that you should very, very well be aware of is that every time somebody does a credit check on you, you have to give them authorization to do so. So if you then start seeing inquiries on your credit bureau that you didn't authorize, that is something that you then can have the credit bureau look into for you as to why an individual pulled a credit bureau or a company pulled a credit bureau that you did not consent to. So take a look at that and make sure that you know who's checking your credit, and make sure you know who you have credit with. And as I said, clean it up as best you can, clean it up as often as you can. So as far as credit goes, we have talked about, again, the 5 C's of credit. Take a look, research them. We've talked about taking this time to review your credit and see what's there and determine what you don't need. You can come out of this COVID crisis with better credit than perhaps you went into it with. So use this time wisely. Take a look at who you have credit with. Get rid of who you don't need. Credit score. Your credit score that you'll see on your own personal inquiry will be different from the one that I see, but make sure that you know what your score is, so at least that way you can wear that like a badge of honor. You can actually use that credit score with pride and make sure that nobody is doing anything negative to impact your credit, because you have complete control over your credit. When you get to that point, you'll be a much happier person. I have a question that just came through. my beacon score is quite different on TransUnion than it is Equifax. Speak to this, please. So that's a great point. I have been pulling individuals' credit for now 27, 28 years. And as long as TransUnion and Equifax have been in business, there are always discrepancies between the two credit bureau agencies. It doesn't make one right, doesn't make one wrong. That's why I encourage you to check both, because you're going to see things on your TransUnion credit bureau that aren't on your Equifax credit bureau. But as long as the trades are the same, so for example, you have the same credit card and loans on TransUnion as you do on Equifax, then it's telling the correct story. As far as the FICO or beacon score goes, there is going to be a discrepancy because they don't use the same algorithms to come up with their scoring method. But as long as the trades are the same, that's important. If there is a significant difference between the two scores, between the two credit bureau agencies, then inquire as to why, because you want as good a beacon score as you can get. I actually got a client on Friday that had a 900 beacon score, which is the highest beacon score you can possibly get. And I've only ever seen it twice. So from that standpoint, you want to strive to get 900. So if there is a difference between the two, inquire as to why, if it's a significant one. Other than that, I think we've covered everything that we can today about credit. We did talk about, again, the Enriched Academy individual, Kevin Cochran, that was with me last week. Take a look at that and share that with people you know. I can't stress the importance of credit enough. You want to make sure that your credit is as good as it can possibly be, because this goes with you for your entire life. I have people that are young that have bad credit. I have people that are in their 60s and 70s that have bad credit. And it's a shame because nobody ever taught them properly. Nobody ever taught them what they could do. Nobody ever showed them what little steps they could take to clean their credit. And before you know it, you take a year or 2 years of trying to clean your credit, you can do a really good job and you can have your credit improve significantly. So from that standpoint, if it's great, maintain it, keep it great. If it's bad, let's work on it. Let's talk. Let's figure out what we can do to clean it up for you. And we can go from there. Going forward, actually, another question. Does it look negative if I cancel a credit card? I wouldn't think so at all. No. If you're canceling credit that you don't need, it's showing that you have a very good business acumen, or at least a very good handle on your credit. You're eliminating debt that's not needed. So from that standpoint, I wouldn't think it looks bad at all. I think the lenders will relish in that, simply because, again, they're knowing that you're managing your credit well and credit wisely. Next week, we're going to be talking about what you can do to refinance some of this debt, what steps that you can take. Now, again, keep in mind, I am a mortgage broker, so we're going to be talking mainly about mortgage refinances and how and what it's going to look like, and how it can benefit you going forward. When it comes to debt consolidation, as far as loans or lines of credit, to just consolidate debt with no asset behind it, that's always been difficult, and it's becoming even more difficult just given the climate of banking today. But we'll definitely discuss it, and I'm going to try to have a guest on with me next week that could perhaps speak to that aspect of things. But we're going to talk about, again, debt consolidation and cleaning up credit next week. So I thank you all for joining me today. And if you have any questions, email them to us and reach out to me any way you'd like, and we'll most certainly get you taken care of. Thanks so much. Have a wonderful day, and we'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.